The reason serves here is it's the sort of like the bookends to this whole passage. We see in the verse 1, and we see it again in verse 11. And that's the focus of the sermon today. Not all these horrible, terrible things that we all can fall into following after. We can all turn away from God and be caught up in the sins and the lusts of our life and sort of include God in all the things that we do. You know, I'll take this part of God and I'll take this part of the world, and I like that teaching over there. We can sort of put it all together and turn away from God and think we're doing okay. And then God comes and enumerates our sins. But He gives us a warning. He tells us what leads away from Him. What leads away from Him? And the message today is those who ponder. Those who ponder. And that's what God tells the people. Here in verse 1, at the beginning, He says, the righteous perish and no one ponders it in his heart. Devout men are taken away and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. We've got to be careful if we notice that the number of righteous people are starting to decline. God says, I take them away. I take them out of your midst for their sake, not yours. I spare them from the evil to come. And in verse 11 He says, whom have you so dreaded and feared that you have been false to me and have neither remembered me nor pondered this in your hearts? In verse 1, the link is established between the righteous and those who understand the ways of God. They understand because they've been devout. In their devotion, they pondered the ways of God within their lives. They were sought to understand. In verse 11, the doomed of Israel to whom Isaiah is prophesying are judged guilty because they did not ponder the ways of God. For counting Him as one God among many, for not remembering what the living and real God had done for them to bring them to such security and peace in their own land. They had not pondered the ways and will of God, nor remembered His activity that established them as a nation in the first place. They had moved from living deeply in the Lord to a shallow and worldly way of living, losing reverence in their hearts for their God. With this breakdown in self-examination, they'd stop pondering, they'd stop trying to understand. With this breakdown in self-examination had come the turn to following man-made gods, sacrificing their own children and giving in to the lusts of their hearts. They simply gave no more thought to what they were doing and why it was absolutely wrong. They'd stop thinking about that. They'd stop pondering. God's ways versus the world's ways. My actions versus what God wants me to do. The demonic theorem of relativism had crept in. And this wasn't the first time in their history. We know from the Old Testament. It happened over and over. They went up, had a good leader for a while who followed God, and then he went away and the people went back to doing something terrible. And then God would come again and tell them, you're not following the ways that I want you to be in. They turned again here in chapter 57, and Isaiah is bringing them this prophecy that turned away from following God and counted every way of living okay except for following after God. When the people stopped pondering the ways of God, they failed to understand the relevance of God. Rather, they simply included Him as one of many gods. It's okay for you to believe that if you want to, and I'll believe this, or we can put our beliefs together. But once people